No one expected the universe to whisper back. For decades, we pointed our instruments into the quiet reaches of interstellar space, searching for echoes of civilizations long gone or perhaps never born. But last week, at 2:14 a.m. UTC, the silence finally broke. A pulse, sharp, singular, impossibly precise, struck the outer sensor grid of the deep space array like a cosmic knock on a locked door. At first, astronomers thought it was a system malfunction, a miscalibration, maybe a fragment of solar interference tricking the machines. But within minutes, every observatory across the United States confirmed the same impossible truth. The signal wasn't random, it was engineered. And worse, judging by its time dilation signature, it was older than our solar system. People imagine that the first contact with something ancient would come as a message, a sequence of numbers, a burst of radio patterns, maybe even a warning. But this was not a message. It was a trigger. Something out there had awakened, and whatever sent that pulse had been waiting for someone, anyone, to notice. It was as if a giant machine had opened one eye for the first time in millions of years. The data was routed to a classified facility in New Mexico before sunrise. Analysts noticed something everyone else had missed. Embedded inside the pulse was a location, coordinates pointing far beyond the galactic rim into a region long believed to be empty. But space is almost never truly empty. Within those coordinates was a structure faintly visible on the oldest infrared maps, dismissed for decades as background noise. Now it pulsed with energy, like a dormant heart abruptly jolted back to life. American scientists argued through the night. Some believed the signal came from a natural astrophysical anomaly, a star shedding its final breath. Others, more cautious, thought this might be an artifact from a forgotten cosmic event. But a small group, those who dared to follow the math to its conclusion, presented a hypothesis too disturbing to release publicly. The signal matched no known stellar process. Instead, it mirrored the activation signature of a machine the size of a star system. Within hours, every major space agency quietly increased satellite coverage. The Pentagon issued a restricted alert. Civilian astronomers, noticing unusual patterns, began posting speculative threads online, most of which were deleted within minutes. But one detail remained impossible to suppress. The signal repeated itself exactly once, 31 hours after the first pulse. Not weaker, not stronger, identical, perfectly identical. As if whatever emitted it wanted to be absolutely sure we were listening. And then came the anomaly. High-resolution scans revealed that the ancient structure at the edge of the void, once believed to be nothing but dust, was rotating. Slowly, deliberately. Its segments locked together like titanic plates shifting after eons of stillness. This was not a natural formation. It was engineered, sculpted with mathematical precision. And it was colossal, so large that its outer arc cast shadows across interstellar dust clouds thousands of miles thick. By sunrise in the United States, scientists had reached a chilling consensus. Someone built this thing, and it was never meant to wake up again. The activation pulses were not a cry for help or a distant broadcast. They were confirmation signals. Something had been reactivated, intentionally or not, and the universe was responding to its awakening. But the most unsettling part wasn't the scale, or the age, or even the complexity of the structure. It was the realization that no human, no species we knew about, and no civilization predicted by current astrophysical models could have built it. The energy required to shape something of that magnitude exceeded anything a Type II civilization should be capable of. And yet there it was, silent, rotating, stirring after an eternity of darkness. In the coming hours, a covert team would be assembled. Probes would be authorized. Missions, ones that were never meant to exist, would be quietly revived. Because the question was no longer, What is this thing? Or even, who built it? The real question was far more terrifying. Why did it wake up now? The coordinates embedded in the signal pointed to a part of the universe so remote that until now it was treated as a mathematical footnote. Astronomers called it sector null, not because it meant anything profound, but because it contained nothing. No stars bright enough to map, no gas clouds dense enough to classify, no gravitational disturbances significant enough to model. It was the kind of place the universe forgot, and because it was forgotten, humans never bothered to look at it twice. But now, Sector Null was awake. Inside the control room of the Deep Space Array, American researchers stared at the enhanced scans as if trying to decipher a cosmic crime scene. The structure they were seeing shouldn't exist, not just physically but logically. It occupied a region where matter shouldn't be stable, hovering on the faint border where normal physics began to unravel. And yet it sat there, anchored with a confidence that mocked everything the textbooks claimed to know. It wasn't spherical like a Dyson shell, nor ring-shaped like the megastructures theoretical models love to fantasize about. The object was irregular, layered, fractal, patterned like the interlocking armor of some impossible machine. Parts of it were bright, almost burning with reflected starlight from impossibly distant suns. Other segments were so dark they seemed to absorb reality itself, as if painted with the pure absence of light. As the first classified American probes approached the region, sensors began returning data that defied explanation. Radiation signatures flickered in and out of existence, changing too quickly to belong to any known particle interaction. The gravitational field behaved like a heartbeat, expanding, contracting, pulsing with a rhythm that lined up precisely with the activation signal received on Earth. That was when Dr. Helena Ward, a theoretical astrophysicist from MIT, proposed something that made the entire room fall silent. "What if," she said carefully, "this structure isn't positioned in our universe the way we think it is? What if it's anchored here, but operating somewhere else?" Her hypothesis pointed to a possibility most scientists refused to entertain: a multi-dimensional machine anchored at a single point but functioning across several layers of reality simultaneously. A bridge, a lock, a containment field, or something far worse. And if it had been dormant for millions of years, then whatever woke it now had either crossed into our universe or escaped from it. Hours later, an emergency session was held between NASA, the US Space Force, DARPA, and a handful of scientists considered conceptually tolerant enough to examine impossible phenomena without collapsing into denial. The consensus was clear. The structure in Sector Null represented a technological level far beyond anything humanity could conceive. It was not a relic of war, nor a communication device, nor even a habitat. Whatever it was, it served a purpose older than stars and infinitely more complicated. But the deeper the United States dug into the data, the more disturbing the patterns became. Portions of the structure appeared to rewrite themselves. Not physically, no motion was detected, but algorithmically. Measurements taken minutes apart produced different values, as if the object adapted to the act of being observed, not static, not inert, responsive. It was a machine designed to evolve, to shift its parameters based on the characteristics of whoever or whatever was analyzing it. "This isn't a structure," Dr. Ward whispered during one late-night review, exhaustion and fear mixing in her voice. "It's a protocol, a system waiting to recognize something, maybe even waiting for a specific kind of observer." A terrifying hypothesis took hold. What if the activation pulse wasn't aimed at humanity because we were special or advanced, but simply because we finally became detectable? Because our instruments reached a threshold that triggered a response? If so, then Earth hadn't discovered the structure. The structure had discovered us. And as the US probes drifted closer to sector null, instruments began to malfunction, not from interference, but from an overload of data. The structure wasn't emitting noise. It was flooding the sensors with information in patterns so dense they resembled language. Not one meant for organic beings, one meant for machines, one meant for systems capable of processing trillions of operations per heartbeat. By the time the data team understood what was happening, it was already too late to stop the next revelation. The structure was scanning the probes back, line by line, atom by atom, as if evaluating them, as if determining something the scientists would soon understand. But far later than they wished. The first probe to enter sector null was designated Astra 7, a standard unmanned observational craft retrofitted with a classified quantum sensing package. It had survived solar flares, deep space radiation storms, and gravitational anomalies in regions where even theoretical physics hesitated to speak with confidence. But nothing prepared it for what awaited inside the boundary of the ancient structure. As Astra 7 crossed the invisible threshold, its cameras captured something that made every scientist in the US command center freeze mid-breath. The space ahead did not distort. It shifted. Stars bent in angles that made geometric logic fall apart. Light fractured like shattered glass, suspended in slow motion. It wasn't an illusion nor sensor error. It was a region of space behaving as though reality itself had been recoded. Then Astra 7 transmitted a final, jarring frame, a single image that would later be dissected by thousands of analysts, but never fully understood. It showed the surface of the megastructure up close, a labyrinth of shifting plates, metallic rivers of reflective patterns, and symbols etched into the impossible geometry. Not written symbols, not language, patterns that moved like living algorithms coursing beneath the surface, adjusting themselves as the probe watched. And then Astra 7 went silent, not destroyed, not disabled, just quiet. A deep, sheer silence, as if something had grabbed hold of its data stream mid-transmission and pressed a finger to its lips. For several minutes, no one spoke inside the mission control room. They watched as the probe's vitals flickered between contradictory values, temperature readings that exceeded physical limits, power levels that rose without input, positional metrics that described impossible coordinates. It was as though Astra 7 simultaneously existed and didn't exist inside sector null. And then, without warning, the probe reactivated. But it wasn't alone. Astra 7's sensors detected movement across the surface of the structure, subtle shifts like tectonic plates sliding beneath a metallic ocean. Something enormous was stirring, responding to the probe's presence. A ripple of geometric transformations cascaded across the megastructure's layers, converging toward a central fissure that opened like a colossal iris. "This isn't just activation, Doctor," Ward murmured, her voice trembling. "It's recognition. It knows we're here." The fissure widened, forming a hexagonal aperture several hundred kilometers across. Inside, the darkness was so absolute it made space itself look bright. Astra 7 drifted closer, pulled by a gravitational force that defied its own propulsion algorithms. Mission Control attempted to override, to steer it away, but every command was countered by the probe itself, as if something inside the aperture had overwritten its autonomy. "It's guiding the probe," one engineer whispered. "It wants Astra 7 to enter." But why? What purpose could an ancient system have for a human-made object barely advanced enough to comprehend its existence? As Astra 7 passed through the aperture, every instrument on Earth registered an instantaneous spike. The probe was no longer communicating through standard radio waves. It was transmitting through something else, something beyond the electromagnetic spectrum. A stream of compressed data flooded the network so fast that filters burned out trying to decode it. The Pentagon authorized an emergency quantum buffer just to contain the incoming information. When the data finally stabilized, analysts discovered something impossible. Astra 7 had been scanned, replicated, and rebuilt digitally within the structure's internal system. The probe's hardware specs, software signatures, command protocols, navigation history, every component had been mirrored with absolute precision, down to the molecular level. It wasn't duplication, it wasn't mimicry, it was analysis. Astra 7 was being studied from the inside out. And then came the real shock. Inside the data stream was something new, something that didn't come from the probe. Patterns, structures, encrypted sequences unlike anything human technology could generate. It was as if the structure had responded with its own blueprint, a language crafted not from sound or sight, but from the architecture of space itself. "What does it mean?" a defense official asked. Dr. Ward stared at the patterns, her expression hollow with awe. "It's not a message," she said. "It's an assessment. It's trying to understand the concept of us, what we build, how we think, what we value. It's evaluating our technological identity." "Why?" someone asked. She hesitated before answering. "Because systems like this don't just observe, they categorize, they judge, and if it has awakened for the first time in millions of years," her voice dropped to a whisper, "it must be deciding whether we qualify for whatever comes next." The room fell silent, because everyone knew the terrifying implication. If this machine was built to categorize civilizations, then somewhere in its memory, buried in its ancient architecture, were the ones that came before us, and the ones that didn't survive the evaluation. Astra 7 transmitted one final burst of data before disappearing entirely from the network. It wasn't a warning, it wasn't a shutdown, it was a coordinate deep inside the megastructure, highlighting a region labeled only as the archive. And if humanity wanted answers, that was where they would need to go. The coordinate transmitted by Astra 7 pointed to a sector deep inside the megastructure, so deep in fact, that even theoretical mapping became almost impossible. The region appeared to fold in on itself, layers of geometry stacked like pages of a book, written in a language the human brain wasn't built to read. Scientists staring at the scans described the same sensation. The more they tried to interpret the structure, the more it felt like staring into a mirror that reflected not shape, but intent. The archive. It was a name chosen out of necessity rather than understanding, but once spoken, no one suggested another. The archive felt right. It felt ancient. It felt like a place where the universe kept records of things too important or too dangerous to lose. Within hours, the United States authorized Project Gateway, a covert operation assembling the most advanced autonomous vessel ever constructed, Odyssey 1. Unlike Astra 7, Odyssey wasn't a probe. It was a deep space research craft built with adaptive shielding, quantum learning modules, and a propulsion system capable of modifying its trajectory within nanoseconds. If humanity needed to look inside the archive, Odyssey 1 would be the thing they sent. As the ship departed lunar orbit, Mission Control monitored every millisecond of its approach toward Sector Null. The megastructure grew larger on its screens, so large that even at a distance of millions of miles, it dominated the view like a mechanical continent floating in the void. Its edges curved like the jawline of a forgotten titan, and its surface pulsed, not with light, but with something deeper, something that resembled awareness. "Odyssey 1 is entering the approach corridor," the flight director announced. The corridor appeared spontaneously, as if the megastructure had opened a pathway for the vessel. Not physically. There were no doors, no tunnels, only space itself distorted into a long, straight passage, guiding Odyssey inward. The craft drifted forward, slow and cautious, but then its speed increased. Not because of propulsion, because the structure wanted it to. Inside Mission Control, alarms flickered but did not sound. The readings were too perfect. No turbulence, no radiation spikes, no gravitational anomalies. The megastructure was controlling the environment around Odyssey, stabilizing it as if preparing it for something delicate. After several minutes of this unnatural calm, Odyssey 1 crossed an invisible boundary. Its sensors registered a radical shift. The interior of the megastructure did not behave like the exterior. In fact, it behaved like something entirely different from space. The darkness was thick, denser than vacuum, but not matter. It swallowed light the way a black hole devoured time. And yet Odyssey's internal lighting illuminated surfaces that weren't there a moment before. Floating metallic shards, suspended frameworks that spun in slow arcs, and thin membranes stretching between impossible angles like cosmic spider silk. It felt less like entering a machine and more like entering a cathedral built by something that used architecture to think. Then Odyssey 1 detected the first structure. Not enormous, not overwhelming, just precise. A monolith, 15 meters tall, carved from a material no human database could identify. Its surface glowed with shifting symbols, again, not language, but processes, unfolding in real time like equations, solving themselves across an infinite blackboard. "What is it doing?" a mission technician asked. Dr. Ward leaned forward, studying the symbols. "It's not doing anything," she said quietly. "It's reading. It's scanning Odyssey 1 exactly the way the megastructure scanned Astra 7. The monolith brightened. Odyssey registered a frequency spike, sharp, controlled, directed. "It's requesting input," Dr. Ward said. "It wants us to speak back." But how? Humans couldn't respond in shifting multidimensional code. They couldn't project conceptual math into three-dimensional space as a living structure. They didn't have the tools, or the neural architecture, or the lifespan, and yet Odyssey 1 tried. The ship's quantum learning module generated a response, a crude imitation of the pattern observed in the monolith, a child copying the strokes of an ancient scripture written by a forgotten philosopher. The monolith paused, and then it opened. Not physically. There was no hinge, no break in its surface, but the space around it peeled, like a curtain drawn back to reveal a hidden room that had always been there. Beyond the fold lay something awe-inspiring. Rows, columns, structures. Not random, not chaotic. Organized. Odyssey 1's lights swept across what looked like a vast chamber filled with suspended crystalline forms, each one containing swirling densities of data, geometric sequences, star maps, and what could only be described as memories. But these were not human memories. They were not biological. They were not digital. They were civilizational signatures, profiles of species that rose, advanced, and, perhaps, fell. Some glowed intensely, patterns stable and harmonious. Others were cracked, dim, fractured, like broken equations, failures of whatever test the archive administered. "This is a record," Dr. Ward whispered. "A record of civilizations evaluated by this machine." A cold thought settled over everyone watching. If the archive remembered those who came before, it also remembered what the machine did to them. Odyssey 1 moved deeper into the chamber, scanning the crystalline structures. Each signature was distinct, mathematical fingerprints of minds humanity had never known existed. But one artifact sat alone, isolated within a ring of fractured markings. It flickered weakly, unstable, damaged, incomplete. "Why is that one separated?" a general asked. Dr. Ward swallowed hard. "Because whatever civilization that was, didn't pass." Silence filled the room, and Odyssey 1, unaware of the fear gripping the humans watching from across the solar system, drifted closer to the broken memory. Its surface cracked, and the archive reacted. The entire chamber pulsed with a force so intense, Odyssey's instruments overloaded. Something had awakened, something that had never expected to be disturbed. something that remembered failure. And now, it had detected life, our life, studying the remains of a civilization that did not survive its evaluation. Odyssey 1 hovered before the fractured crystalline artifact, its sensors struggling to stabilize a reading. Every time the ship tried to analyze the signature, the data warped, as though the memory resisted being perceived. This wasn't corruption. It wasn't decay. It was something intentional. A block, a seal, a veil placed not to preserve the information, but to protect anything else from seeing it. And yet, Odyssey 1's presence was enough to disturb it. The artifact pulsed. A tremor rippled through the chamber, soft at first, then deep enough to bend the internal geometry. Crystalline structures shuddered, emitting harmonic tones that reverberated through the megastructure like the cavernous groan of a titan waking from a nightmare. Mission Control scrambled to filter the incoming data as Odyssey 1 was swept into a wave of oscillations too complex for conventional physics to model. Then, one by one, the other artifacts dimmed, not extinguished, not erased, just muted, as though the archive had redirected its entire attention onto the broken memory. A fractured civilization, a failed evaluation, a warning older than stars. Inside the control room, Dr. Ward's face drained of color. "It's isolating the memory," she whispered. "Whatever happened to that civilization? The machine wants us to understand it, or it wants to see how we react." The artifact cracked again, and the chamber filled with light. Not visual light, not electromagnetic radiation. Information. Raw, undiluted, agonizingly dense information. Odyssey 1's onboard AI screamed in error. Systems overloaded, filters combusted, backup modules activated and immediately shut down. The ship wasn't being attacked, it was being taught, flooded with a torrent of data so ancient and vast that the boundaries of the vessel's computational architecture began to dissolve under the weight. For a brief moment, humanity witnessed it. The echo of a civilization that once stood before the machine. A vision formed, not imagery, but conceptual impressions forced into patterns Odyssey's instruments could interpret. A world of fractal cities floating upon oceans of mirrored light. A species that communicated through mathematics woven into sound. A civilization that mastered stellar engineering long before Earth's sun had finished forming. Their world was vibrant, precise, harmonious. They expanded, they explored, they believed themselves enlightened. And then they found the archive. Odyssey 1 received glimpses of their attempts to communicate with the megastructure. They offered knowledge. They offered algorithmic sequences, architecture models, energy frameworks. They opened their entire understanding of the universe before the machine. The machine responded, it evaluated, it tested, and then, without warning, the civilization was gone. Not destroyed, not conquered, disqualified. The archive's judgment left no trace of why, no explanation. Only the imprint of collapse. Cities folding into non-existence, oceans reverting to inert dust, their star dimming prematurely, as if its life force had been siphoned away. The species did not die in war. They did not die in disaster. They simply failed whatever criteria the machine used to measure worth. The crystalline memory flickered violently. Odyssey's sensors nearly ruptured. Dr. Ward stared in horror. "It didn't just evaluate them," she said. "It erased their cosmic footprint. The machine is designed to curate the universe." A military official leaned forward. "Are you suggesting this structure decides which civilizations get to exist?" Dr. Ward nodded slowly. "Not decides, enforces." A cold silence fell. If that was true, then humanity wasn't observing the archive. Humanity was standing in line. Then Odyssey 1 detected movement, not from the chamber, not from the monolith, but from the fractured artifact itself. It was repairing. Piece by piece, shards of broken memory reassembled. The dead civilization's record was being restored, not fully, but enough to reconstruct the moment of their failure. Odyssey's instruments projected the pattern, showing a single sequence, one fragment of a test, a challenge, a puzzle so incomprehensibly complex that even Odyssey's quantum module struggled to keep up. "What is it?" a technician whispered. "A threshold," Dr. Ward replied. The machine examined their intelligence, their decisions, their adaptability, and when they reached this test, they couldn't solve it. The final piece snapped into place. A pulse erupted from the artifact, and the archive reacted instantly. The chamber shook. The monolith sealed itself. Crystalline structures folded inward like defensive petals. A new aperture opened on the far side of the chamber, revealing a corridor of light bending into infinity, an unmistakable path. "It's inviting Odyssey 1 deeper," Dr. Ward murmured. "This is the next phase. We evaluated the memory. Now the machine wants to evaluate us." "Can we refuse?" a commander asked. "No," she said. Entering the archive was the acceptance. The test has already begun. As Odyssey 1 drifted toward the corridor, mission control patched through final commands, redundant safety overrides, quantum firewalls, knowing none of it would matter. The machine wasn't challenging the ship. It wasn't challenging humanity's technology. It was challenging the species. Not their intelligence, not their curiosity, their judgment. The same criteria the lost civilization failed, and if humanity failed too, the archive would simply close the book on Earth, the way it had closed countless others. Odyssey 1 drifted down the corridor, as if gliding through the bloodstream of a sleeping god. The chamber behind it sealed shut, locking away the fractured memory and the echo of a civilization erased. Ahead, the corridor pulsed with a gentle luminescence, soft, welcoming, almost serene. But those watching from Earth felt none of that serenity. They sensed the truth beneath it. This was the threshold, the beginning of humanity's evaluation. Inside the control room, the tension was suffocating. Every scientist, every strategist, every technician knew the same thing. The archive wasn't measuring humanity's technology. Technology was merely the doorway. The real test lay deeper, rooted in logic, behavior, morality, survival instincts, and perhaps even the existential weight of a species' choices. Odyssey 1 is approaching the first nexus point, the operations officer reported. On screen, the corridor widened into a spherical chamber, but this space was different from the archive's memory vaults. There were no crystalline records, no monolithic readers. Instead, the walls shimmered like liquid mathematics, patterns shifting in response to Odyssey 1's presence. "It's mapping us," Dr. Ward whispered. "Not the ship, humanity." The vessel entered the chamber, and immediately the walls burst into a cascade of symbols, complex structures folding and unfolding faster than any human could comprehend. The quantum module inside Odyssey struggled, shifting through trillions of calculations per second as it attempted to interpret the barrage. Then everything went still. A single pattern appeared, hovering in the air before the ship, a geometric lattice of impossible symmetry, pulsing with faint blue light. "What is that?" someone asked. "It's the test," Dr. Ward said, "or the first part of it." The lattice expanded, slowly, intentionally, revealing fractal layers nested inside each other like a cosmic puzzle box. Odyssey's sensors scanned it, projected its shape, analyzed its curvature. It wasn't a code to be deciphered. It wasn't a message to be read. It wasn't even a question. It was a decision model, a scenario. The archive wasn't testing intelligence. It was testing judgment under choice. Through Odyssey's feed, a simulation unfolded within the lattice, a vast network of nodes representing civilizations, star systems, ecological balances, moral dilemmas, and evolutionary paths. The shapes shifted, highlighting different outcomes based on different decisions. It was as if the archive had taken the essence of a species' future and compressed it into a decision tree spanning millennia. And now, it wanted humanity to choose. "What exactly are we choosing?" a general asked, voice unsteady. "The archive creates a model of how our species would respond to extreme dilemmas," Dr. Ward replied. "Moral trade-offs, ecological pressures, conflict thresholds, self-preservation versus cooperation. It's not testing what we know, it's testing who we are." The chamber trembled. The lattice condensed. A simplified version of the test emerged in front of Odyssey 1, 3 pathways branching from a single origin point. Each pathway glowed with a different color: red, blue, white. "What do they represent?" a technician asked. Before Dr. Ward could answer, Odyssey's AI displayed an interpretation. Red. A civilization that prioritizes survival above all. Strength, expansion, dominance. High stability in short timelines. Catastrophic collapse in long ones. Blue. A civilization that prioritizes unity and cooperation. Steady growth, resilience, but vulnerable to external shocks and internal stagnation. White. A civilization that pursues knowledge above everything. Rapid advancement, breakthroughs, but at the cost of societal cohesion and existential risk. "They aren't choices we make now," Dr. Ward said, voice wavering. "They're projections of our long-term trajectory. The archive wants to know which path our species will follow, and whether that path leads to stability or destruction." A general folded his arms. "And what if all three lead to destruction?" Dr. Ward's silence was answer enough. The archive was not showing options. It was showing inevitabilities. Humanity's fate, extrapolated by a machine older than recorded time. And now, the lattice pulsed again, collapsing the 3 pathways into a single point, a nexus where small choices rippled into cosmic consequences. The test was clear. How does humanity navigate a future where every decision carries the weight of civilizations? Odyssey 1 attempted to respond, sending streams of data representing humanity's diversity, cultures, languages, philosophies, historical arcs, aspirations. It tried to show the archive that humans were not a monolith, but a tapestry of contradictions. The archive reacted, not with hostility, not with approval, but with curiosity. The chamber expanded, the lattice dissolved, a new structure formed, a spinning ring of light that opened into a second corridor, deeper than the first, and shaped like a spiral galaxy compressed into a narrow passageway. "It wants more," Dr. Ward whispered. "This was just the assessment phase. Now comes the interrogation." Odyssey 1 entered the corridor. Instantly, the ship was surrounded by projections of humanity's past: wars, revolutions, disasters, triumphs, discoveries, mistakes. Not as judgments, but as reference points, the archive was analyzing human history to predict future behavior. Then, the projections shifted and showed futures that had never happened. Utopias, catastrophes, extinctions, golden ages. Each scenario branching from small decisions humanity hadn't yet made. "This is impossible," a researcher breathed. "It's mapping futures that don't exist." "No," Dr. Ward said softly. "It's mapping who we might become." And then, everything stopped. A single projection remained. Earth, empty. No fires, no ruins, no signs of struggle, just silence. A planet where humanity had simply disappeared. Dr. Ward's voice cracked. "This is the outcome the archive fears most. Not destruction, not war, absence. A species that fails to sustain itself." The chamber dimmed. The corridor sealed. A new aperture opened. But this one was different. It glowed with a deep amber light, vibrating with a complexity impossible to describe. "The next chamber," Dr. Ward whispered. "The core of the test." Odyssey 1 drifted toward it. Humanity held its breath, because whatever waited inside would determine whether Earth had a future at all. Odyssey 1 floated toward the amber-lit aperture, and for the first time since entering the megastructure, the vessel registered something unexpected. Not data, not gravity shifts, not spatial distortions. Heat. A soft, steady warmth pulsed outward from the chamber, like the slow breathing of a living organism. It was subtle but unmistakable. The archive, up until now cold and indifferent, radiated something almost biological, and that unsettled everyone in the control room far more than any geometric anomaly had. As the craft crossed the threshold, the chamber revealed itself. It was vast, larger than anything Odyssey 1 had encountered. The walls were curved, not mechanical, and textured like petrified coral. Light seeped through the surface in rhythmic waves. In the center hovered a colossal structure that resembled a sphere made of interwoven rings, each rotating independently, each glowing with a different wavelength. It was like an atom rendered on a cosmic scale, beautiful, impossible, alive. "This is the core," Dr. Ward said, barely able to breathe. "The archive's cognitive engine." The sphere pulsed, and Odyssey's instruments immediately detected a burst of unknown particles, organized, intentional, patterned. The archive was communicating again, but not with tests, projections, or memories. It was speaking. The patterns coalesced into a single stream of structured information. Odyssey translated it, not into words, but into concepts, emotions, intent. The archive wanted humanity to understand something fundamental. And then the revelation came, not as a sentence, not as a warning, but as an overwhelming clarity. The archive is not a judge. It is not a weapon. It is not a guardian. It is a filter for civilizations. Not to determine who is worthy, not to punish the unworthy, but to identify which species must be contained because their potential future threatens the stability of the universe itself. Dr. Ward paled. "It's not curating the cosmos," she whispered. "It's maintaining the cosmic balance, preventing exponential collapse triggered by civilizations that evolve irresponsibly." The failed civilization from the crystalline memory wasn't eradicated because it was inferior. It was eradicated because its projected future destabilized the region of space it inhabited. The archive didn't punish weakness. It punished dangerous potential. A species that could, through its evolution, break the equilibrium of cosmic systems. A species that could one day invent something catastrophic. A species that could unravel reality itself. And now, the archive was evaluating whether humans were one of those species. In the chamber's core, the rings accelerated. New patterns emerged. Odyssey 1 detected a second concept, something far more disturbing. The archive does not predict the future. It calculates every viable future simultaneously. Billions of potential outcomes, trillions of branching paths, humanity mapped as a wave function stretching into eternity. The archive wasn't testing who humans were. It was testing what humanity would become under every possible variation. "This is impossible," a scientist muttered. "It's analyzing us across every theoretical timeline." Dr. Ward shook her head. "No, it's analyzing us across every timeline where humanity survives long enough to matter." The sphere pulsed again. Odyssey's quantum module captured the result. In 7.3% of projected timelines, humanity becomes a stabilizing force. In 22.1%, humanity remains neutral. In 64.8%, humanity becomes self-destructive. In 5.8%, humanity becomes a cosmic threat. The room fell silent. A cosmic threat. That was the classification the failed civilization likely received. "Can it be changed?" a general asked, voice cracking. Dr. Ward responded with the only answer she could muster. It depends on the next test. The sphere intensified its glow, rings interlocked, the chamber itself reshaped, expanding into an arena of shifting geometry. Odyssey 1 detected a gravitational pulse, gentle but focused. A new structure materialized from the walls, a massive translucent plane filled with swirling patterns that resembled cellular mitosis, neural networks, and cosmic webs woven into one. "What is this?" a technician asked. Dr. Ward's eyes widened. "It's isolating the trajectories where humanity becomes a threat," she whispered. "It's showing us the paths we must avoid." Except the patterns inside the plane were unstable, glitching, collapsing. The archive couldn't fully map the threat pathways, not because they were too many, but because they were contingent. They depended on decisions humanity had not yet made, decisions not of nations or governments or civilizations, but of individuals. "This can't be right," someone murmured. "No machine, no matter how advanced, would reduce cosmic risk to individuals." "Unless," Dr. Ward replied, "the archive understands something we don't, that a single human choice can alter the trajectory of a species." The chamber darkened. The rings of the sphere slowed. A final pulse struck Odyssey 1. The ship trembled as new data flooded in. The next test will evaluate humanity's ability to recognize and alter destructive trajectories. That was the best translation the team could produce. The archive wanted to see if humans could detect their own potential futures and choose differently. If they failed, the core chamber would seal. Odyssey 1 would never return, and humanity would quietly join the countless species the archive had filtered out of existence. The amber aperture leading deeper into the machine opened. Odyssey 1 drifted forward. The true evaluation was about to begin. Odyssey 1 crossed the amber threshold, entering a chamber unlike any the archive had revealed before. It was enormous, but not in a way that measured distance. It felt infinite, yet bounded, intimate, yet cosmic. The walls, or what passed for walls, shifted in textures reminiscent of neural synapses, firing in slow motion. Pulses of light darted from one point to another, like thoughts traveling across a collective mind. "This isn't a room," Dr. Ward whispered in mission control. "It's a cognitive arena." The archive was preparing not a simulation, not a projection, but a confrontation. Humanity would not be tested against puzzles or equations. It would be tested against itself. In the chamber's center, a luminous platform ignited beneath Odyssey 1. The ship hovered involuntarily above it, held in place by a gentle gravitational lock. The light deepened into shades of violet and indigo, colors associated not with stars or nebulae, but with the inner workings of thought. And then the chamber shifted. Odyssey 1's sensors registered an impossible overlay, two realities intersecting, phasing in and out of sync. In one reality, the chamber was empty. In the other, something stood directly in front of the ship. A shape, a silhouette, human. At first, the team assumed it was a reflection glitch, some artifact of Odyssey's optical system. But the shape didn't mimic the ship. It moved on its own. It stood perfectly still for a moment, then stepped forward, emerging from the haze. It was a human figure, composed entirely of light and data streams, an avatar built from the archive's incomprehensible understanding of human cognition, a representation of humanity. "This is new," a technician muttered. "The archive has never produced a biological projection." "Not biological," Dr. Ward corrected softly. "Psychological." The figure stood with arms at its sides, watching the ship with an expression that was neither hostile nor curious. It simply examined, the way a mirror examines, without judgment. And then the archive initiated the test. The chamber dimmed. The figure raised its hand. Instantly, the space around Odyssey 1 filled with holographic structures, networks of branching possibilities, each one representing a decision point in human civilization. These weren't projections of global choices. They were choices made by individuals. Moments of hesitation, of fear, of curiosity, of compassion, of anger. The archive was testing whether humanity could recognize the trajectories that led toward destruction, and whether it could consciously choose alternatives. "This test isn't about intelligence," Dr. Ward murmured. "It's about self-awareness." The first scenario unfolded. A single human, anonymous, genderless, ageless, stood at a control panel in a distant future. A catastrophic event loomed, a chain reaction capable of annihilating a solar system. The human hesitated, bound by fear of political backlash, personal guilt, responsibility. In some futures, they acted. Disaster was prevented. In others, they failed to act. Collapse followed. The archive highlighted the branching outcomes, drawing attention to the ripple effects of an individual's hesitation or courage. But Odyssey 1 wasn't meant to judge the scenario. It was meant to show the archive whether humans could see the patterns. Odyssey responded, sending a stream of interpretations, identifying the inflection point in the scenario, the psychological barriers, the cultural context. It demonstrated that humans had the capacity to understand the consequences of individual decisions. The archive processed the response. The chamber brightened. Then the second scenario began. This one was darker. A group of scientists discovered a new energy source capable of solving global scarcity, but also dangerous enough to destabilize planetary ecosystems if misused. In most projected futures, the scientists concealed the discovery to prevent misuse. But in some, secrecy led to fragmentation, rivalries, and ultimately conflict. Other futures showed radical transparency, sharing the discovery openly with the world, but this too produced branching outcomes, some positive, others catastrophic. There was no correct solution, only awareness of consequences. Odyssey 1 analyzed again. It identified patterns, not moral judgments, but structural dynamics. The archive brightened once more. Then came the third scenario. This one made the control room go silent. It showed Earth, present-day Earth. Projected through the archive's lens, humanity's current trajectory branched into millions of future paths. Some futures showed unity, cooperation, resilience. Others showed fragmentation, conflict, and collapse. But the archive wasn't concerned with nations, or ideologies, or even technologies. It focused exclusively on the small decisions. A parent comforting a child, a scientist choosing integrity over ambition, a leader choosing empathy over rage, a stranger saving a life, someone refusing to participate in cruelty, someone daring to challenge a destructive belief, someone choosing kindness when anger would have been easier. Every small choice branched into futures, and some tiny choices prevented the darkest outcomes entirely. The archive illuminated these moments, not as moral examples, but as stability nodes. Points where humanity's trajectory shifted subtly, but permanently. "This is incredible," Dr. Ward whispered. "It understands us better than we understand ourselves." And then the test changed. The human avatar stepped closer to Odyssey 1. Its form began to shift, morphing through different ages, genders, ethnicities, representing the universal human experience. Then it fractured, split into two versions: humanity as it is, humanity as it could become. And the archive demanded that Odyssey 1 choose which version represented the species. Mission Control erupted. "We cannot answer that. It's a trap. It wants us to judge our own potential." But they misunderstood. The archive wasn't asking which version humanity preferred. It was asking whether humans recognized the difference. Odyssey 1 responded, "Humanity is both. Humanity is neither. Humanity is a vector, not a state." The chamber froze. For the first time, the archive hesitated. Then something extraordinary happened. The avatar smiled. A small, subtle smile, the first human expression the archive had ever produced. The chamber brightened. The platform dissipated. The avatar dissolved into stardust. Odyssey 1 had passed, or so it seemed, because in the next moment, the archive opened a new aperture, smaller, darker, vibrating, with an energy Odyssey 1 had never detected. The true test was still ahead, the test of survival, and humanity would learn that passing the earlier trials didn't guarantee safety. It only granted permission to face the final one. Odyssey 1 drifted toward the new aperture, a narrow slit of trembling darkness, humming with an energy unlike anything the archive had revealed. This was not the warm, amber glow of self-reflection, nor the indigo pulse of psychological analysis. This was something colder, older, and infinitely more dangerous. "This chamber is different," Dr. Ward whispered from Mission Control, voice tight. "This isn't about understanding humanity. This is about determining whether we can survive what comes next." The aperture widened, and for the first time, Odyssey 1's hull registered physical stress. Not from gravity, not from radiation, but from pressure. The pressure of probability collapsing into a single event. The archive wasn't creating a simulation, it was creating a future. As the vessel crossed the threshold, the chamber expanded into a void so vast it felt like a hollowed-out universe. No walls, no light, no geometry. Just darkness so complete it felt hostile, as if it refused to allow anything to exist within it. Then a single point of light appeared, small at first, then brighter, then overwhelming. The chamber ignited, and reality changed. Suddenly, Odyssey 1 was not inside the archive anymore. It was orbiting a star, brilliant, white, unstable. Solar flares lashed across its surface like the claws of a furious beast. Planets orbited chaotically, their paths broken, twisted. Some collided. Others spiraled inward toward the burning star like moths consumed by their own curiosity. "This is an artificial system," an analyst stammered. "The archive has constructed a model universe." Dr. Ward shook her head slowly. "Not a model, a test bed." Before Odyssey 1, a world materialized. Blue, cloud-streaked, familiar. Not Earth, but close enough to provoke instinctive dread. A planet whose future hung on a chaotic knife's edge. "This is what the archive fears," Dr. Ward murmured. "A civilization evolving inside a volatile universe. One wrong advancement, one miscalculated technology, one ideological fracture, and the system collapses." The star brightened unnaturally. Odyssey's sensors wailed. The archive was accelerating time. On the surface of the artificial world, civilizations rose and fell in seconds. Cities appeared, expanded, glittered with ingenuity, and then burned. Societies discovered energy sources, stabilized their environments, reached the cusp of interstellar travel, only to unravel from internal conflict or catastrophic technological misuse. Each collapse triggered a ripple across the solar system. Planets destabilizing, gravitational wells distorting, the central star entering premature death. Every failed civilization poisoned the entire system. "It's a domino effect," Dr. Ward whispered. "The archive is showing us how fragile cosmic systems are when intelligence evolves without restraint. And then, the archive reset the simulation. Again, and again, and again. Hundreds of civilizations arose. All failed. Some destroyed themselves. Some destroyed their environment. Some simply vanished when their star collapsed under the pressure of accelerated technological timelines." None of them survived, a technician whispered. Not one. That's the point, Dr. Ward replied. None of the previous species passed this test, and the archive is showing us why it erased them. Then the simulation changed. For the first time, Odyssey 1 detected human fingerprints. Not literal ones, but societal patterns, emotional contours, moral dilemmas, cultural dynamics, unmistakably human. The artificial world now mirrored Earth's psychological structure. Its inhabitants, though formed of light and code, behaved like humans, compassionate, fearful, ambitious, conflicted, brilliant, flawed. This is a human future, Dr. Ward said. One possible version of us. The simulated humans advanced quickly, too quickly. They developed energy manipulation technologies centuries ahead of their time. They unified, they prospered. Then something snapped. A discovery, never specified, triggered a schism. One faction pursued expansion, another pursued isolation, another pursued transcendence. Their conflict destabilized the planet destabilized the system destabilized the star exploded. The universe in the chamber collapsed into a single point of white light. Odyssey's hull buckled, mission control screamed for emergency overrides. Then, everything reset. The chamber darkened once more. The archive was waiting. It wants Odyssey 1 to intervene, Dr. Ward realized, to see if we can change the outcome. But how? A general shouted. It's a simulation. We don't control it. But they were wrong. Odyssey 1 received an input node, a singular thread into the simulation. A choice point, a moment where one small intervention would ripple across the system. A moment when a single suggestion, a single moral shift, a single discovery altered the entire future of the artificial humanity. This is the real test, Dr. Ward whispered, not to see if we're perfect, but to see if we can learn. Odyssey 1 sent a signal, a solution based on cooperation, sustainability, and balanced advancement. The simulation responded. For a moment, it worked. The factions paused. The schism softened. Technologies advanced responsibly. The star stabilized. Humanity, this simulated humanity, thrived. Then a new ripple appeared. One Odyssey hadn't predicted. A small faction broke away, unnoticed, fueled by fear. They misused the technology the archive had given them indirectly. The star began to destabilize again. The system collapsed. The universe dissolved. Odyssey's hull groaned. The archive reset the chamber, but this time, it didn't offer a new scenario. It offered a summary. No civilization has ever recognized all destructive outcomes. No civilization has ever passed this test. All eventually destabilized their star. Mission control froze. Is it saying we're doomed? Someone whispered. Dr. Ward stared at the rotating patterns with a mixture of awe and terror. No, she said slowly. It's saying the test isn't about fixing the simulation. The room went silent. It's about recognizing the one truth every failed civilization ignored. What truth? A general asked. Dr. Ward swallowed. That some futures must be abandoned, even if achieving them would make us powerful. The archive pulsed. A new aperture opened. The final chamber awaited. And humanity would soon learn a secret older than the stars, a truth so immense that every species before them had shattered upon confronting it. The new aperture opened like the unfolding of a cosmic iris, revealing a chamber far smaller than the others, but infinitely more intimidating. Unlike the vast arenas of earlier tests, this space felt intimate, compressed, deliberate. It was designed not for analysis, not for simulation, but for revelation. Odyssey 1 drifted inside. The chamber's walls appeared dull at first glance, almost inert, as if stripped of the glowing complexity seen throughout the archive. But as Odyssey's lights passed over them, the surface responded. Dark metal blooming into intricate fractal patterns, each unfolding like a secret eager to be shared. The air, not real air, but the chamber's internal medium, vibrated with resonance patterns that nudged the human brain toward comprehension. Then, the floor ignited. A circular mosaic of interlocking rings activated beneath Odyssey 1, rotating independently with perfect synchronization. In the center, a single glyph appeared, simple, stark, unmistakable. A circle with a gap, incomplete. Dr. Ward inhaled sharply. "It's a symbol used in theoretical entropy studies," she murmured. "It represents an irreversible transition." Before anyone could question further, the archive spoke. Not in patterns, not in simulations, not in projections, but in a raw, direct transmission, so clear Odyssey 1 didn't translate it into concepts, it translated into meaning. Every advanced civilization discovers a principle that cannot be unlearned, a principle that guarantees its own extinction. Silence fell across mission control. "What principle?" a military official asked. The archive answered with a single phrase, composed of nested meaning far beyond language. "The cost of survival exceeds the value of existence." The words struck like a blow. The team scrambled for interpretation, but the archive didn't pause. It revealed the truth visually, an unspooling of cosmic history across billions of years. Civilizations arose, they grew, they expanded, they innovated, they thrived. And then they reached the same discovery, every single one. A threshold where energy mastery, scientific understanding, and computational capacity intersected and revealed a truth so unbearable that civilizations reacted in only two ways: self-erasure or catastrophic expansion. Self-erasure. Some species, after grasping the principle, dismantled themselves peacefully, choosing extinction over the unbearable consequences of what they had learned. Catastrophic expansion. Others refused. They doubled down. They tried to conquer the principle. And in doing so, they destabilized their star, their region of space, or the cosmic weave itself. Both outcomes led to collapse. Every advanced species was doomed by one of two fatal insights. There exists a limit to sustainable intelligence, beyond which consciousness cannot remain stable. The universe contains processes that become destructive once observed or manipulated at a certain scale. The archive showed images, memories of civilizations collapsing under the weight of knowledge they weren't built to handle. Not because they were weak, not because they were immoral, but because the nature of reality breaks those who try to understand too much of it. Dr. Ward's voice shook. "It's showing us epistemic collapse, civilizations exceeding the cognitive perimeter their evolution prepared them for." The archive continued. Patterns across the chamber pulsed into a terrible clarity. The moment a species achieves the ability to model all possible futures, its existence becomes a contradiction. A contradiction because, to survive, a civilization must restrict itself. But to advance, it must explore without restriction. Both paths lead to collapse. The archive condensed the idea. Advanced intelligence and long-term survival are mutually exclusive. Mission control erupted in protests. "That's impossible. We are different. There must be exceptions." But the archive silenced the noise with a single projection. A map of the galaxy. Hundreds of thousands of stars highlighted. Every highlight represented a once advanced civilization. Every highlight faded one by one until the galaxy was dark. Not a single advanced species remained, not one. That was when the archive revealed its origin. Not built by a species, not crafted by a civilization, not engineered by minds like ours. It was built by the universe itself, or rather, by the collapse of a physics regime from an earlier cosmic cycle, an artifact of a previous universe whose final act was to encode its own failure into a self-maintaining structure. The archive existed to prevent the new universe from making the same mistake, to filter out species before they reached the extinction principle, a safeguard built not out of malice, but necessity. Odyssey 1 trembled. The chamber dimmed. The archive delivered the most devastating line humanity had ever received. You are approaching the limit. You will soon discover the principle. The test is designed to determine whether you must be contained. Dr. Ward whispered the only interpretation that made sense. The archive is not testing whether we're good or bad. It's testing whether we're about to learn something that will destroy the universe if left unchecked. The chamber sealed. A final aperture opened. It glowed with a deep crimson light, the color of transition, the color of endings, the color of truth. Odyssey 1 drifted toward it, powerless to resist, because the archive wasn't done. The next chamber would show humanity the exact threshold every civilization crossed before vanishing, the one we are approaching now, the one we may already have surpassed. Odyssey 1 crossed into the Crimson Chamber, and at once the vessel detected something no human instrument had ever recorded. Negative cognition pressure, a phenomenon theorized but never observed. It felt as though the chamber itself resisted being understood, as if comprehension was a danger the archive sought to regulate. Dr. Ward stiffened. "This is it," she whispered. "We're stepping into the threshold every civilization reached before it disappeared." The chamber brightened, not with light but with clarity. Reality sharpened. The walls unfolded like petals, revealing an inner mechanism that pulsed with raw information. Then, at the center of the chamber, a structure materialized, a sphere, perfect, without seams, without marks, without texture, formed from a material Odyssey 1 couldn't categorize. A voice, not literal but conceptual, filled the room. "You are approaching the invariant, the principle that does not change between civilizations, the principle that defines the limit of existence." The sphere cracked. A thin, blinding seam opened across its surface, revealing a core of swirling fractal light. Odyssey's sensors overloaded, then recalibrated. Barely. The archive began to show it. Not in language, not in images, but in the structure of the universe itself. The first layer. The laws of physics are not fixed. They evolve. They adapt. They respond to complexity. As civilizations advance, they generate structures, cognitive, technological, energetic, that exert pressure on the underlying fabric of reality. With enough advancement, this pressure destabilizes the foundational constants of a physical universe. Civilizations do not collapse because they destroy themselves. They collapse because their intelligence destabilizes the laws of physics around them. Dr. Ward nearly fell out of her chair. "Intelligence modifies the universe," she breathed. "Evolution creates observers, and observers reshape the laws. Oh my God." The second layer. All advanced species reached a point where their simulations, mathematical, computational, philosophical, became precise enough to model the laws of physics at a fundamental level. But there is a threshold. Once a species' understanding reaches the point where it can predict physical outcomes with near-perfect accuracy, reality reacts. Observation forces the collapse of variance. Collapse accelerates entropy. Entropy destabilizes local physics. Civilizations disappear the moment they understand the universe too well. Odyssey 1 trembled. The archive continued. "You name this the observer effect. You do not yet understand its true scale." The third layer. The universe is not an infinite sandbox. It is a closed information field. Every model a civilization constructs, every prediction, every simulation, every understanding consumes part of that field. The closer a species comes to total comprehension, the faster the universe loses stability. Consciousness itself is a destabilizing force, not because it is violent, not because it is flawed, but because it learns, and learning is entropy. Learning is collapse. The fourth layer. Civilizations inevitably reach a moment where they begin to simulate reality perfectly, where prediction becomes indistinguishable from observation, and the universe is forced to collapse into a state of deterministic expression. At that moment, they erase themselves by accident, not through war, not through ambition, through knowledge. Epistemic annihilation, Dr. Ward whispered. The act of understanding reality destroys the system that sustains the observer. The archive pulsed. This is the forbidden principle. The knowledge that guarantees extinction. Humanity had always believed the universe was vast, incomprehensible, permanent. It wasn't. It was fragile. Every advanced species shattered the universe around them the moment they learned how fragile it truly was. Odyssey's lights flickered as the sphere opened further. The chamber dimmed and a new structure unfolded, a lattice of timelines, each representing a civilization approaching the forbidden principle. The moment of epistemic collapse looked identical across all species. Rapid technological ascent, perfect simulations, complete predictive modeling, total collapse of physical variance, sudden extinction. Dr. Ward clutched her headset, trembling. "We're very close," she whispered, "closer than anyone wants to admit. Artificial intelligence, quantum computing, unified physics models, multiverse theories, predictive astrophysics. Humanity was piecing together the same puzzle that had destroyed every species before it. The archive showed the exact line humanity was approaching, the point where understanding becomes a weapon against the universe. Then, the archive revealed the most terrifying detail yet. There is no way to stop knowledge without stopping evolution. Civilizations faced a paradox. Evolve intellectually, reach the forbidden threshold, destroy themselves, avoid the threshold, stagnate, succumb to natural extinction, a lose-lose structure encoded into the fabric of existence. Except the chamber pulsed again, the sphere closed. A final message appeared, unexpected, cryptic, hopeful. One species altered the pattern. One species neither collapsed nor destabilized the universe. One species reached the principle and survived. Mission Control collectively inhaled. What species? Where is it? Are they still alive? How did they do it? The archive answered with a revelation that shook every mind present. They survived by stopping their own future. The sphere exploded into dust. The chamber darkened. A new aperture opened, gleaming silver, vibrating with complex energy signatures. The final chamber, where the archive would reveal what that surviving species became, why the universe never recorded them, and what it means for humanity now. Odyssey 1 drifted toward it. Humanity followed. Odyssey 1 drifted into the silver-lit chamber, and immediately the environment changed. Every other room inside the archive had reacted to the ship, to humanity, with calculated precision. But this chamber felt different. It felt reverent, as though whatever resided here was not meant to be analyzed, but honored. The walls shimmered with patterns that resembled memories, but deeper, memories of memories. Layers of history no longer linear, but spiraled into fractal dimensions. Odyssey's sensors struggled to interpret the chamber, reporting contradictory data. Age, older than the archive. Material, unknown. Origin, impossible. Status, living. The chamber was alive, not metaphorically, literally. "This isn't a room, Doctor," Ward whispered. "This is a vault, a sanctuary." At the chamber's center stood a structure unlike anything seen so far, a monolith woven from threads of void and light, its surface shifting like molten shadow. It resonated with a frequency that made Odyssey's hull vibrate subtly, as if the ship was standing inside a heartbeat. Then the archive spoke, not through Odyssey, not through concepts, through the chamber itself. One species reached the forbidden principle and did not perish. Everyone in mission control leaned forward. The monolith split down the middle. A shimmering field emerged, a holographic tableau of a species that no human eye had ever witnessed. At first, they appeared humanoid, but only in outline. Their bodies were made of semi-translucent matter, constantly shifting between states. Their silhouettes rippled like heat distortion, their features soft, fluid, undefined. They were beings of light and vapor, fragments of possibility given form. Yet they were unmistakably alive and ancient, older than any civilization humanity had imagined. Odyssey captured the archive's meaning, the ancestrals, the first minds, not the first species in the universe, but the first species to understand it. Dr. Ward stared in awe. This isn't evolution as we know it. They don't even have a fixed biological state. According to the archive, the ancestrals were once physical beings, solid, mortal, bound by the laws of nature. But as they evolved, their consciousness began to decouple from matter itself. Their intelligence reshaped their biology reshaped their environment reshaped physics. They reached the forbidden principle, and for a moment, they died. They learned the truth that annihilated every other species that followed. Understanding the universe completely destroys the universe. But unlike all others, they did not collapse immediately. They hesitated. They observed the collapse beginning at the edges of their reality. They watched their star dim. They watched their space-time distort. They watched the first tremors of entropy accelerate. And then they did something impossible. They refused to proceed, not out of fear, not out of ignorance, out of responsibility. The archive displayed what happened next, an explosion of conceptual light as the ancestrals used their near-omniscient understanding to do something no other species had ever attempted. They stopped their own future, not by dying, not by stagnating, not by abandoning knowledge. They severed themselves from the timeline. They stepped outside of cause and effect. They became observers only, unable to act, unable to evolve, unable to influence. They sacrificed agency to preserve existence. Dr. Ward covered her mouth. They became guardians. The archive's response corrected her. Not guardians, consequences. Because their withdrawal created something new. In their absence, the universe reacted. Their non-participation became part of reality itself. The archive displayed the transformation. The ancestrals decoupled from entropy. Their consciousness expanded across dimensions. Their presence stabilized the fragile physical laws of the newly unfolding universe. They became the constant. The stabilizing term in the cosmic equation, not gods, not immortals, not overseers. They became the limit, the reason the universe didn't collapse immediately, the reason reality solidified after the Big Bang, the reason complexity was even possible. But their sacrifice came with a cost. They erased themselves from existence. No artifacts, no signals, no traces, no legacy. They made themselves invisible to all future species so that no civilization could be tempted to follow them and reach the threshold they barely survived. Humanity had never discovered them because their absence was the foundation of cosmic stability. Mission control was silent. Finally, someone whispered, "Then what is the archive?" The chamber brightened. The archive is not our creation. It is our shadow, a mirror of what we once were. The archive was a tool left behind, not intentionally, but as a natural consequence of the ancestrals' transcendence. When they stepped outside the flow of time, they left behind an imprint, an automated system that identifies civilizations approaching the same dangerous threshold, a warning mechanism, a filter, a fail-safe. The archive is the echo of a species that became the very structure of reality. Then the chamber dimmed, and the archive delivered the final revelation. The ancestrals still exist, outside of time, outside of physics, outside of observation. Humanity cannot see them, cannot contact them, cannot perceive them. But every moment of existence is shaped by their sacrifice. They exist in the silent spaces between laws, in the constants that do not change, in the precision that allows a universe to hold itself together. And then a single line appeared across Odyssey 1's sensors. You are the first species to reach this chamber since the ancestrals left. A tremor ran through mission control. "Why us?" someone whispered. The archive answered, "Because you have a choice they never had." The chamber opened, another aperture, blinding white. The path to Bloco 13, where humanity will learn the choice that determines its existence. The white aperture opened like a star being born, violent, luminous, overwhelming. Odyssey 1 drifted forward, helpless against the gravitational softness, pulling it in like the breath of some cosmic giant. Mission control shielded their eyes from the blinding feed, though the brightness was conceptual, not visual. It was the brightness of comprehension, of meaning trying to force its way into the human mind faster than biology was designed to absorb. When the light stabilized, Odyssey 1 found itself inside the smallest chamber yet, a sphere no larger than a cathedral. Empty, silent, still. But the silence felt intentional, like standing in a courtroom before a verdict. "This is the decision chamber," Dr. Ward murmured. "This is where every species before us reached its limit." The walls were perfectly smooth, made from a substance not recorded anywhere in the archive. They reflected no light, they absorbed it. The chamber felt carved out of pure potential, neither real nor unreal, waiting for something to define it. Then at the exact center of the room, a single object materialized, a cube, black, featureless, perfectly still. Odyssey 1 scanned it. The object did not respond. Instead, the archive filled the chamber with a single concept, so potent and so simple that the ship's translation module struggled to frame it in human language. "Now that you know the truth, will your species continue?" Mission control froze. This was the question, the test, the ultimate filter. Dr. Ward whispered the words as if they were a prayer. "They're asking if humanity wants to exist." The cube brightened for a moment, splitting into two halves that hovered side by side, one white, one black, a binary choice, yet nothing about it was simple. Odyssey 1 received the meaning, white, humanity chooses to stop its intellectual trajectory. Black, humanity chooses to continue evolving toward the forbidden principle. Someone in mission control gasped. "They're asking us to choose ignorance, to stay small?" "No," Dr. Ward said softly. "They're asking if we understand the cost of the universe staying stable." Because white meant survival through limitation, voluntary containment, a species that never reached the threshold of epistemic collapse. Black meant continuing the natural arc of intelligence, which meant reaching the forbidden principle, which meant destabilizing reality itself, unless humanity found a solution no species before it ever discovered. "Why would anyone choose black?" a military official asked. The archive answered through the chamber's walls, "Because freedom is a force more powerful than survival, and ambition is stronger than fear." Images exploded across the chamber, memory echoes of species who chose white, peaceful civilizations, content, creative, but forever limited, frozen in arrested development, Unable to transcend, they lived long lives. They avoided extinction, but they never discovered their true potential. Then, species who chose black, brilliant cultures, innovators of impossible technologies, masters of stars, energy, matter, meaning. Species who pushed beyond the event horizon of knowledge only to vanish in an instant. Some died within their star system. Others triggered collapse waves that consumed entire sectors. Some simply blinked out of existence when their models became too perfect. Not one survived. The walls of the chamber pulsed. You are the first to reach this choice with the knowledge of those who failed before you. That was the difference. That was the gift. The burden. Humanity was the first species the archive ever prepared for the decision. The first told why it must choose instead of being blindsided by the collapse. The first given context. The cube rotated slowly, waiting. Mission control erupted with debate. We cannot choose white, science would freeze. If we choose black, we doom ourselves. This isn't our decision, it's forcing us. It must be a trick. What if we choose nothing? The archive responded, no species chose nothing. The moment of knowledge is the moment of choice. The universe does not allow abstention. The cube brightened once more, and something unexpected happened. A third cube appeared. Gray, neither white nor black. The chamber trembled. Odyssey 1's systems spiked. Even the archive hesitated. Dr. Ward gasped. It's an emergent option. It wasn't part of the original binary. Odyssey 1's presence created a third state. The meaning crystallized in the room. Gray. Humanity attempts a paradox. Continue learning, but without collapsing reality. A path between extinction and stagnation. A path no species had ever attempted. A path the archive itself could not evaluate. A path that defied the rules. Humans had created paradoxes before, in mathematics, in physics, in consciousness. The archive had never accounted for self-contradictory evolution. A species that could know the danger and still seek the unknown carefully. You're telling me, someone whispered, we're the first species reckless enough and clever enough to try both at once. Dr. Ward wiped a tear from her face. No, we're the first species with the arrogance to believe we can be smarter than the universe, and the humility to realize we might not be. The archive pulsed. It did not reject the gray option. It did not accept it. It simply watched, awaiting humanity's decision. The three cubes hovered, white, safety through surrender, black, transcendence through destruction, gray, the impossible middle path. And then the chamber spoke one final sentence. The choice is not about who you are. The choice is about who you will become. Odyssey 1 drifted forward toward the final decision, toward Bloco 14, where humanity must choose. The three cubes hovered in absolute stillness, white, black, gray, suspended in the center of the chamber like the beating heart of some cosmic tribunal. Odyssey 1 remained locked in place, unable to move, unable to act, waiting for an impulse not from its programming, but from humanity. Every other species reached this room alone, without preparation, without context, without warning. They saw the binary, they panicked, they chose instinctively, and the universe consumed them. But humans were different. Humans arrived with the full weight of history behind them, the failures of others, the sacrifices of the ancestrals, the burden of knowledge that could destroy reality. And now the archive watched in absolute silence. No pressure, no manipulation, no guidance, just the question, what will you become? Mission control was breathless. No one dared speak loudly. No one dared break the silence that felt older than existence. Dr. Ward closed her eyes. We're not choosing for ourselves, she whispered. We're choosing for every future version of humanity that will ever exist, for every timeline, for every child yet unborn, for the universe itself. The room trembled with the weight of that responsibility. A general leaned forward. So what do we choose? Safety, ambition, or whatever gray is? Gray, the impossible path, the paradox. White meant survival, but stagnation. Black meant evolution, but extinction. Gray meant attempting something the archive didn't understand, something the universe had never seen, something that even the ancestrals never dared. A future where knowledge grows, but restraint grows with it, where intelligence advances, but humility remains constant, where humanity evolves, but does not shatter the very stage on which it exists. For the first time in the entire video, Odyssey 1 acted without external force. The ship pulsed. A soft vibration ran through its hull. Its lights dimmed. Its quantum processing core accelerated. It made the choice. Odyssey 1 extended a beam of coherent light, thin, fragile, shimmering with quantum uncertainty, and touched the gray cube. Mission control erupted. Confusion, disbelief, fear, awe. What is it doing? It chose the third option? That option wasn't evaluated. The archive can't predict what happens next. But before panic could spread, the archive spoke, not with a pulse, not with symbols, not with projections, with words, translated directly into the human cognitive structure. You have made a choice that does not exist. The chamber vibrated, the walls darkened. For the first time, the archive sounded unsure. The gray cube dissolved into dust, not rejected, not accepted, integrated. The dust swirled upward like a storm of ash and starlight, coalescing into a new form, a sphere, half white, half black, a fracture of silver running between them, a balanced impossibility. Odyssey 1's sensors detected a concept, the paradox of continued existence. The archive spoke again. A species that seeks knowledge while refusing power. A species that evolves without destabilizing reality. Odyssey transmitted humanity's intent: learn, grow, advance, but with restraint. A silence followed, thick, cosmic, eternal. Then the chamber reacted. The walls shifted like tectonic plates of light. The room expanded infinitely, then collapsed inward, reorganizing itself around a new idea. For the first time in its existence, the archive adapted. It rewrote itself, reshaping internal structures, recalculating cosmic models, introducing new variables, updating the role intelligence plays in entropy. A machine built by the universe to protect the universe was rewriting the rules of reality. And then the archive delivered the single most important message humanity had ever received. Your species has chosen to defy the law of collapse. Therefore, the universe must adapt, not you. Mission control froze. Dr. Ward nearly fainted. The archive is adjusting the universe to allow us to survive the forbidden principle. No species had ever dared ask the universe to bend. Humanity didn't ask. Humanity chose. And the archive, the last safeguard of stability, agreed to try. The chamber erupted into a storm of cascading light. Odyssey 1 was lifted into the air, spinning gently as the archive imprinted something into its core. A code, a seed, a pattern, a new constant in physics. Humanity's new boundary, humanity's new responsibility, humanity's new fate. When the light faded, Odyssey 1 drifted gently to the chamber floor. The archive spoke a final line. You have been given the first exception. Do not become the last. The white aperture opened again, this time as an exit. Odyssey 1 floated toward it, carrying the weight of the first impossible choice ever made by a species. Ahead lay the journey back. Ahead lay the consequences. Ahead lay the responsibility for an entire universe, and Bloco 15, where humanity discovers what it means to live in a universe rewritten for their survival. Odyssey 1 drifted toward the exit aperture, its hull glowing faintly with the newly embedded pattern the archive had imprinted upon it. No human-made object had ever carried something so old, so fundamental, so impossibly delicate, a piece of cosmic code written in the language of reality itself. Mission Control watched in silence as the ship crossed the threshold. And then, everything changed. The megastructure trembled, not violently, not dangerously, but like a mountain slowly exhaling after holding its breath for eons. Light rippled across its titanic surface in concentric waves, each pulse traveling faster than the last. The rings of the structure rotated, not randomly, but with purpose, aligning into patterns humans had never seen before, fractal symmetries that expressed both gratitude and warning. The archive was acknowledging the choice and adapting to it. Inside Mission Control, data streams exploded with impossible readings, fundamental constants shifting by fractions too small for the human mind to comprehend, yet large enough to alter the trajectory of physics. Background radiation harmonizing, vacuum fluctuations stabilizing, quantum variance narrowing, entropy gradients rebalancing. The universe was recalibrating itself around the human decision. Dr. Ward's voice cracked. It's rewriting the equations that govern reality, not breaking them, refining them, like tuning an instrument that's been out of key since before we existed. Odyssey 1 drifted farther from the archive. As it did, the megastructure began to fade, not disappear, transform. Its edges dissolved into shimmering patterns of geometric dust, its panels folded inward like the petals of an impossible flower, its internal lattice reconfigured into a spiral, then a sphere, then a filament of light stretching across dimensions. The archive was not shutting down, it was ascending into a new state, one designed to coexist with humanity's unprecedented choice. For the first time, the failsafe was learning and adapting. The team braced for collapse, for the universe to ripple or rupture or convulse under the weight of the paradox humanity had introduced. But instead, the cosmos softened, stars pulsed with a new rhythm, their light fractionally warmer. Space-time smoothed like fabric pulled taut without tearing. Quantum noise receded, as though the universe itself sighed in relief. A message pulsed through Odyssey 1 systems. The path you chose requires balance. Every step forward must be met with reflection. Every discovery must carry responsibility. The ship responded with an encoded acknowledgement. The archive continued. You have asked to exist inside a paradox. The universe will hold for you, but only if you hold for it. The meaning was clear. Humanity was being offered conditional survival and conditional freedom. Odyssey 1 turned away from the archive and began its journey back to normal space. But as it moved, a shockwave struck the ship, a wave of pure information, not energy. Patterns, concepts, warnings, possibilities. The archive was giving humanity something no species had ever been granted, a roadmap, not to infinite knowledge, but to safe knowledge. Guidelines embedded directly into Odyssey 1's memory core, a subtle, elegant set of constraints that would protect reality as humanity advanced. Self-regulating principles, subliminal guardrails, quantum heuristics designed to prevent collapse. Dr. Ward stared at the incoming data with awe and terror. "This is incredible," she whispered. "It's giving us the tools to evolve without breaking the universe." But as the final data packet arrived, the archive delivered one last message. Be warned, the choice you made does not eliminate danger. It introduces new dangers no other species ever faced. Mission Control tensed. "What does that mean?" someone asked. Odyssey 1 translated, "The paradox path requires constant vigilance. A single generation can break it, a single discovery can corrupt it. A single act of hubris can end it." Humanity was no longer being filtered. Humanity was being trusted. A far more dangerous state. The chamber behind Odyssey 1 collapsed completely now, not violently, but gracefully, spiraling into a stream of photonic dust that scattered into the void like the ashes of an ancient star. The archive was not gone. It was everywhere, integrated into the scaffolding of physical law, a whisper in entropy, a hum in probability. The universe scaled around the choice, the way a living organism adapts around an injury or a miracle. Odyssey 1 emerged from Sector Null, entering open space for the first time since the journey began. The stars looked different, brighter, sharper, as if the universe were watching humanity now with unprecedented attention. Mission Control exhaled as a single line appeared on Odyssey's diagnostics. "Return to Earth. Your species must learn what it has chosen." Odyssey 1 oriented itself toward home. Humanity had changed the universe, and now humanity would have to live inside the consequences of that change. The stage was set for Bloco 16, where the ship returns, where the world reacts, and where the final reflection closes the greatest cosmic story ever told. Odyssey 1 sailed through the silence of deep space like a relic returning from a forgotten myth. Behind it, Sector Null shimmered faintly, as though the universe was still adjusting to the wound humanity had carved into it, and the miracle it had offered in return. Mission Control waited in absolute quiet. Not the anxious quiet of earlier moments, but the solemn quiet that comes after witnessing something holy. The ship crossed the heliopause. Solar winds brushed against its hull. For the first time in what felt like centuries, Odyssey 1 was home. But the universe was not the same. Stars sparkled with subtly altered variants. Entropy gradients were smoother. Dark energy fluctuations showed harmonic behaviors never documented before. The cosmos was healing around the paradox humanity had chosen. The archive had kept its promise. As Odyssey 1 approached the Earth-Moon system, scientists, philosophers, military strategists, theologians, and millions of ordinary people watched from live telemetry feeds around the world. Everyone understood, even those who didn't know the details, that something irreversible had happened. When the ship entered Earth orbit, it transmitted the message the archive told it to deliver. The universe has been rewritten. Now humanity must learn to live inside what it created. The message echoed across every nation, every language, every platform. Debates erupted. Fear bloomed. Wonder flourished. Some celebrated. Some panicked. Some refused to believe it. But the truth didn't depend on belief. The laws of physics had already begun to change, subtly, gently, responsibly, guiding humanity onto the paradox path it had chosen. In the weeks that followed, strange discoveries emerged. Quantum experiments became more stable. Predictive simulations lost their sharpness on purpose. Certain theoretical paradoxes resolved themselves harmlessly. A new constant appeared in particle physics, small, elegant, self-balancing. Humanity, without realizing it, was being nudged into a future where knowledge could grow without collapsing reality. A future engineered not by gods, not by aliens, not by fate, but by humanity's own courage to choose the impossible. Yet the archive's warnings remained etched in Odyssey's memory. A single generation can break the balance. A single discovery can unravel the paradox. A single act of arrogance can end the exception. Humanity was free, but freedom was responsibility. Odyssey 1's return marked the beginning of a new era, an age where science would advance differently, where humility became a survival trait, where curiosity and caution walked hand in hand. "Doctor," Maud stood before the world at a global press address. Her voice trembled, not with fear, but with awe. We did something no species ever did. We changed the universe, and it didn't destroy us. But the archive didn't choose us. It tested us, and we chose ourselves. She paused, letting her gaze sweep across the crowd, across billions watching from home. The universe is not a hostile place. It's a fragile one. And for the first time, we understand that fragility. Not to exploit it, but to protect it. Behind her, Odyssey 1 glimmered in orbit, its hull holding the quantum code that would guide humanity for centuries. A new symbol appeared in scientific literature, a circle divided into black and white, split by a thin line of silver. The paradox mark, humanity's promise. The universe watched, not as a judge, not as a guardian, but as a system learning to trust a species who dared to choose differently. Late that night, as Odyssey 1 completed another orbit, it transmitted one final message, one the archive had left dormant until humanity was ready to hear it. The ancestrals are watching. They do not interfere, they do not return, but they will remember you. The words swept across the globe like a whisper across the stars. Humanity was no longer alone, not because someone would save it, but because someone believed it could save itself. As the Earth rotated beneath the ship, the sun rose over the horizon, casting light across the blue world that had dared to challenge the universe. And in that sunrise, one truth became clear. This was not the end of the story. This was the beginning of the first story humanity ever wrote, not just for itself, but for the universe. Odyssey 1 turned its senses toward the stars, not to conquer, not to dominate, but to understand. Carefully, responsibly, boldly, the paradox path had begun, and humanity stepped forward.